I'm so happy to be here. It's actually the end of a beautiful and inspiring journey here in New Zealand. It started in Auckland and finishing today, just after this meeting. I'm here with my family, with my young child Guy, 8 years old. I left at home my two elder daughters, 24 and 22, Noah and Neri. This is my family, and I have great appreciation for the way they support me in going around the world. Just another word to introduce myself before we deep dive into the Tel Aviv story, so you can understand what is my background and how did I tie or knit this special skills I think we all need in order to improve and work so passionately for our cities. I think my background is in a way a bit eclectic. My first degree was in psychology and education. I started as a teacher. Then I opened my own firm as an entrepreneur, young entrepreneur, 24 years old. My second degree is in business school. I believed I need some support in that. And now I'm hopefully in a couple of months handing in my PhD in the geography faculty in Haifa University, focusing on branding cities. I'm saying that because I think we do need a background of research in order to do what we're just going to get into the little story of Tel Aviv. Now, before I start on that, on the story of Tel Aviv, I do want to introduce myself as part of a new profession that I think lots of my mates here share with me. I do think and believe from the bottom of my heart that we are city makers. It's a new profession. We don't define ourselves in the beginning as so. We think that we are the person who's in charge of tourism or economic development or education or treasure or whatever. But at the end of the day, if we do our job correctly, we're city makers. We're people that are taking the red tapes off, listening to our residents and enabling them to feel very, very homish at their own city. Now, walking this morning throughout your city, I must tell you, I don't think you appreciate enough what you've got under your hands. I think it's the most beautiful city with great, vibrant arts and culture, and it's out there in the street. But how are we combining this? And I do know and acknowledge the trauma you had with just a couple of years ago. But again, I do want you to believe I come from a city just like that, and not just one trauma. But having said that, and nobody wants to experience this, once you had it, unfortunately, take it as an opportunity. There's so much resources and money going out there to fix this, and now you've got an opportunity to fix it better. Where? This is a question that will go into it. So Tel Aviv, I hope you're hearing me right, as a smart startup city, before we understood that, we actually decided 10 years ago that we want to take Tel Aviv global. We want to make it part of the global world. What is a global city? Professor Saskia Sassen coined the term in 1991. She said a leading city with an international business center. There has to be a business center and a direct influence on global affairs. You have to have the stock exchange, the offices of attorneys in your city. That is a global city. If you want to point out the four major global cities in the world, New York, London, Tokyo, Paris, and you close your eyes while the globe goes around, you understand that actually when one stock exchange gets up, the other one goes to sleep. And then the world keeps on doing business without interference. So if you want to be part of that global business center, this is the way your city should be positioned and approved. And when we started doing that job, 7 years ago, 2010, and we put this image, just this specific image, I go with it, I update my presentation, but this one I don't, because when I made that 7 years ago, my boss, which is the mayor, he's 20 years in office, and without his support, I would never be able to do whatever my team and me were doing. But when we did this image, he looked at me and he said, Hila, are you sure? Aren't you overtaking it? Us, Tel Aviv, one of the world's 20 leading global cities. Now, to tell you the truth, I also did not think that we are going to be in 5 or 10 years one of the 20. And the real truth, we're not there yet. But we are positioned as so. People are looking at us as one of the leading cities. Why is that? I think in a way is because we forced ourselves to ask us, what is our DNA? To understand it really from the deep of the story. What is our USP? What is it, that unique selling point? Now, I had a little workshop this morning with your team, and as we all thought, each one had, not each one, but several people had different ideas of what is the USP of Christchurch. And what we did understood, that in order to decide at the end of the day what is the USP, there will be one cherry on that table, but all the rest will have to leave their ideas and join that one story. So it takes a lot of leadership to decide what is that story that you all are going to collaborate together with. And when I'm saying all, it's the city makers, it's the city officials, it's the private sector, which for me always knows better than us and is one step before us. It's all the organizations that are combining. It's the foundation that has just been brought up. All these together have to understand together what is the DNA of a city. And that takes time. And that takes patience. I'm telling you, I came into office 10 years ago. I was in charge of the centennial year. Tel Aviv was 2009, 100 years old, and my mayor is a pilot, so he gets a work plan and everything is getting ready ahead of time. So 2007 we wrote the work plan. 2007 we had the whole program on. We still did not know what is our USP. Although we had a whole process of rebranding, a beautiful one, and we got our new logo, the whole story without the slogan. We had the advertising team offered a new slogan. Thank God we didn't go with them, although all that money put in that process. But we didn't really get that USP. What is that thing that we have down there, and that our founders, the 66 families that sat on a dune just 109 years ago, 108 years ago, they had a lottery to divide the plots between them. Of course, the man there, you see him just, he organized the lottery. No wonders he got the best plot, but that same point, just where they were standing today, how many people here have been to Tel Aviv? Oh, nice. That's a nice amount. So I hope you've been to Rothschild Boulevard, and if you haven't, you must go back, because this is a must. On that same place where they started the lottery, the Rothschild Boulevard is there today. It's the best place for coffee, for energy. All the startups are there. We understood that the USP of Tel Aviv is the startup city. Now, when I'm saying that, we did not get that in the beginning. We were lucky enough that the book Startup Nation was published in 2010, and it actually told the story of the Startup Nation, which, because Israel is so small, not small in size and small in population, only 8 million people, Tel Aviv is actually, or Israel as a whole, is one city. You can refer to that. So the Startup City is the city or the cherry of the Startup Nation. So that little title that wrapped up us so beautifully was just grassrooted from downstairs. We had no consulting team that told us that we are the startup team, with the startup city. We just understood that from beneath. And today, if you go to Rothschild Boulevard and you knock on the doors, you have all the startup scene right there. When we went on 2011 to Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, to ask him, what do you think is what should we do? How can we go global? He said, you guys, you're crazy. You've got it under your carpet. All the ecosystem of startups, you have it better than even for us in New York. You're second after Silicon Valley. Go back home and do your homework. And I'm saying that not because we were good or we were bad, it's because sometimes you think you know everything and you still know it. So it's okay to take the time and learn and explore, maybe even fail by the decision and make it afterwards a little bit better. But for us, once we captured that startup city, we really felt that we are going right. But at the same time, we had to remember that we're having more layers to that story. That means that the Jaffa, the Tel Aviv's old city, where we have the most ancient port of the city in the world, 3,000 years old, is also part of the story. Just like for you guys, you have the Maoris. It's part of the story. This is how you greet and you acknowledge every event before you start. It's part of you. You can't ignore it. The White City, largest Bauhaus concentration in the world, UNESCO World Heritage Site declared in 2003. Again, this is part of our story. It's another layer. Is that our USP? I don't think so. There's more UNESCO World Heritage Site all over the world, but it is part of it, and that's a community that is coming to the city because of that. Young, wild, and free. One-third of our residents are in the age of 18 to 35. There was a stage in my life where I was really part of that, but unfortunately we're not there. Mediterranean capital of the cool. 1 of every 231 residents had a bar or a cafe. 1 for 290 residents has a startup. That means it's a really, you see the correlation between cafes, bars, startups. The creative class really needs this energy. We have a beautiful beach, and I put that image only like the 9th or the 10th one, not coincidentally. I put it again because some people thought that the beach is our USP, but there are so many cities with beaches around the world. So it's a great asset, it's another layer, but it's not the thing that because of that people will come to Tel Aviv. What I'm trying to show is that it takes time to understand what is that the thing that for that people will come to Christchurch. That place that only Christchurch in the world is that Antarctic place. As the mayor just said, it's your explorers. It's the only, you know how to do it. You know how to go to places in the world that no one else will go. So there you go. You have it just out there. We are the gateway to Israel. We're very lucky. Although the airport is not in Tel Aviv, it's outside. It's called the Ben Gurion, just next to Lod. But on the boarding pass, it says Tel Aviv. So there you go, in a beautiful collaboration. And I think the airport here is also a managing partner. So this is a great partnership between the airport and the Tel Aviv. We didn't have budget. But when on every person that comes to Israel on the boarding pass, it says Tel Aviv, there's your logo that just goes and helps you. So at the end of the day, that means how are you putting those key elements of an adaptable city? This lady is giving a yoga class on the rooftop. Some of you have been to the rooftop of Tel Aviv and you've seen the beautiful scenery. We really believe that that building belongs to everyone. So there can be yoga classes upstairs, there can be dancing for elderly downstairs every Thursday, every Tuesday is a community center for kids. The building works from 8 to 4, but all the rest, it belongs to the community, and people really feel much better now because it's not just the bureaucracy and not just where you pay your taxes, you also get back. At the end of the day, you want to attract to your city the talented ones. And I know that it's declared by your mayor as one of the most important things to bring 100,000 people back to the city. How are you doing it? How are you bringing this creative class, as Professor Richard Florida coined? How do you pull these people that are creative, they are manufacturing, they're creating themselves their jobs? You know, before you had to build a manufacturer so people will sit next to their machines and work. Today, you have your computer, that's your manufacturer item. That's your tool. You sit in a cafe and you work. You do your things, you connect all over. How do you attract that creative class? Well, as Richard Florida said, you have to be aware as a city of 3 T's. First, talent. Give your talented people really feel that they are part of the city. This is how the entrance to the city hall looks. I went, as I told you, to a little stroll this morning through your city. Wow, you're talented, feels at home in your city. I see them in every place, and it was so different. You could see it's not the same artist that did the same work. It's just like such a big, eclectic artist and talent that are part of that. Keep on doing it. By the way, the most scary thing is to sit back and to say, oh, it's okay, it's fine. Now that you're there, you have to work even harder to get those talented people feel at home. Technology is the second T. In Tel Aviv, we have, the mayor decided that a citywide free Wi-Fi is very, very important. He said that just like we all get our electricity to our bulbs and the water to our taps, we should get free Wi-Fi to our devices. And this is something that fuels us, that gives us knowledge, information. We can't live this age without that. And when we, 2-3 years later, when we went, this was starting about 4 years ago, when we went to check where is the biggest, where is it rated the most, where is it used the most. So maybe you'll guess that at the beach, because we people, we love fun and we are all the time in the beach. So this is only second place where it's rated. The first place where the free Wi-Fi is used the most is in the south neighborhood of Tel Aviv, where the illegal residents live. Now, you may ask yourself, why are we supporting these illegal immigrants? And I may tell you that the issue of illegal immigrants is all over the world, and it's an issue, and we're not going to talk about it now, because some are for and some are against, and it's okay. But once they're there for some reason, you want to support them so they get that knowledge and then they don't go to negative things and that they do positive things. So a place where is a free Wi-Fi is something that really supports the city and goes to this third T, which is tolerance. You really have to have tolerance for whoever your partnerships in the city are, whether there are non-legal immigrants, where there are the creative class, the talented ones, or the gay community. Then in Tel Aviv, again, maybe you'd think that Israel is a conservative community, but our gay parade every June attracts worldwide thousands and thousands of gays and lesbians are coming from all over, especially from Europe, because it's such a quick flight. All this story really captures the layers, the multi-layers of the city, and gave us the feeling that if Tel Aviv wants to go global, and we are Israel's culture center, we have to, as a city, be very generous with our satellite cities. This picture is a Ron Arad architect designed in Hulon. Hulon is a little city just outside of Tel Aviv. But we believe, again, that the city is in the middle, Tel Aviv, 400,000 inhabitants. But in the satellites around, about 1 million more. Most of them commute every day to work and back. And we refer to ourselves as the metropolitan, as Greater Tel Aviv, sometimes even by budget or by things that we do together. And it's very important for me to go all over the world and talk about Tel Aviv and give my colleagues from the rest of the cities around, give that feeling that they're really part of it. By the way, if we're looking at this specific issue practical from a budget way of looking perspective, a museum is something very expensive. If we're having a free museum branded under Tel Aviv brand, that's the best deal you can get. So don't be afraid of collaborating some things that are not yours. On the contrary, take an ownership on things that are just happening there. Help them, contribute, be generous in little things, and you'll actually get back so much more. The Tel Aviv, of course, is the business center. This is how the Google offices in Tel Aviv look from inside. You can take a slide from one floor to the other. We are world's 27th largest financial centers, declared by GFCI, Global Finance City Index. And this is another little example. It took us 3 years just to get into that index. That index has, I think, 80 or 100 cities put there. They didn't count Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was not on their radar. We worked 3 years in order to get into that index, and now, I'm telling you again, I think we're a little bit higher than what we are. We're positioned very high, and it's great. It does a great job for us. Again, the importance is to see how we're keeping ourselves so high rated, because it's one thing to get up there. It's another thing, much harder, to stay there. So you are now in the opportunity of getting there, but believe me, there's a lot of job afterwards. Tel Aviv has much more than 1,000 startups. I should update my this specific presentation. When we started, it was 400, now it's 1,000 something. But this entrepreneurial community is part of our legacy, is part of our culture. Now, when I say entrepreneurial community, that means 90% of those, unfortunately, will fail, because that's how it is in numbers, we know that. But once they do fail, most of them are serial entrepreneurs, or they'll do the next thing. It does boost economy, it does influence the growth, but we see, or in our culture, failure is part of our next step to the next success, how to learn from that. And I don't want it to sound too easy. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody, believe me. But if you do support, and this is again something that I'm talking to you as leaders, as part of the city influencers, movers and shakers, officers that are supposed to be there and support the young people that fail, because you guys do understand that they will take you to the next step. And it does influence the budget at the end of the day, because Tel Aviv in the beginning of 2000 was almost on bankruptcy, and now the numbers are just getting higher and higher. And my mayor always jokes around that he's the only mayor around the world that for doing a great job, and that the real estate prices are going so high, everybody refers to him as a lousy mayor. So criticism is around everywhere, not only here. He does a great job. We all are doing a great job in Tel Aviv, but inside we're appreciated worldwide. Inside we have lots of criticism. Don't think it's something that you are very special around that. Leveraging I heard you this morning, so I know the feeling that goes around. The end of the day, the story is leveraging the power of your residents, enabling him a true connectivity between the people, between the citizens, between the communities, asking yourself, how are you as city officers, as city makers doing it? And this is just a little example. When we went and issued, I was very privileged to be the founder of Tel Aviv Global in 2010. As I told you, I went to the mayor and to the CEO, offered the idea, had no work plan. No work plan whatsoever. What you see here is a work plan that was actually tailor-made after 3 years or after 2 years, and we built it up. But why am I saying that? Because sometimes you know the way you want to go, but you're not sure of the steps you want to go. That is also okay. If you build those steps carefully, you check yourself after each half a year, after a year, eventually you'll find yourself with a beautiful work plan that when you look back, you say, this is nice, free Wi-Fi, startup studies, reduce city taxes, all these events and projects. But I'm telling you, it was not a tailored work plan that was written in 2010 and then we started. Every brick here added to this cracking the innovation code at the end of the day. 2013, when we looked back, we said, this is a nice work plan. And when I found it in McKinsey report that they quoted New York, London, Berlin, and Tel Aviv, I was very proud. But I'm telling you, the back of the scenes is we did not know it, and we didn't have any KPMG. We were not lucky to have them on board. We just made it ourselves with a little bit of help. But that means, again, that we had some failures also on the way. Not everything was so good. We wanted to bring startup studies, and we eventually found that the way we did it was not the right way. So we had to change the way and make an easy launch pad. But all these things are just to give you an example that you should find the way you think you should go, but there's no one way of how you're going to get there. The library is a little example, which I'm very proud of it, but I think it's very relevant to the library you're going to make just now over here with beautiful budget, beautiful place. I envy you. I wish I could be part of this project. This project was very, very small. When we came back from New York and we asked Mayor Bloomberg, how are we? I was with my mayor there. We had 30 minutes to ask him for little tips to get global. What should we do? And he told us what I told you before, go and look at your ecosystem, work with them. We said, okay, how do we work with them? He said, what we are doing around here is we open co-working space. They opened 10 co-working space in New York, 2011. That was very new. We did not know that concept at the time. I ran that afternoon to see how it works. I was lucky enough to meet there an Israeli lady running one of that co-working space. I loved the idea. My mayor didn't even see it. He had another meeting. I just had to run. But this is something about support and belief in your team. When we came back, we just decided we're going to make this co-working space. We still did not know where. So we looked for places. And we were lucky enough that one of my teammates had a little kid, and it was a winter day. Now, we don't know how to deal with winter. This is something that comes once a year, and not once a year, but we don't have a lot of rain. So he had to take his little kid somewhere to go that whole day with rain, and so he took him to the library, and he came back and he told me, listen, my kid was in the most beautiful point in Tel Aviv, just at the middle of Rothschild Boulevard, 7th floor, beautiful landscape outside, but the library is neglected. 700 meters, some books, 2 librarians that tell you just to be quiet, and there's nothing there. Let's do the co-working space there. That was April 2011. November 2011, half a year later, we launched this. That means getting permission, getting budget, having so-called work plan was not the best. We changed all of the chairs after half a year because we chose bad chairs. But what we did do is we decided we're taking those 700 meters and making them as a co-working space. So 300 meters we left the traditional library, where by now you should know that the number of subscribers have doubled in half of the meters because they liked so much the other energy that was in the co-working space for startups. Now, why am I giving you this idea, this story, apart from the thing that I'm so proud because I was part of it? Because it was so hard to make it, and because the head of librarians did not like the idea and was screaming at me, and she was right from her perspective, because I was doing something that I just came with it. So what? Who says that I'm right? Who says that my team is right? Why should she move her cheese now just because I think she should? Okay? And I'm saying it, I'm really true, and I feel it from the bottom of my heart. She is also right. The thing is, if I think this is the way, I need to take leadership. I need to persuade her or again, I was very lucky that the mayor and the CEO said, yes, this is what we're doing. We're not leaving an open space neglected like that. We can make that change. And now she's one of my best friends because, first of all, she's a very open-minded woman, and she did see the good effect on her specific library. And it's not only that, it's something that I learned through the years, that entrepreneurship is actually an epidemia. That means that when you do something entrepreneurial with its spirit, somebody next to you gets hit by that illness. And there was another room there. She took that room and she started giving it to writers just to use it for free. Every 4 months she gave it to a different writer. And suddenly the whole community of writers were so thankfulness, because in Tel Aviv you live in small apartments. They don't have a place to write their stories and to write their books at home. So once they got this prime location, beautiful office, just to sit and write a book, wow, they really felt that they are privileged. So this is a little story about the library, but it's part of what I'm calling to be a city maker. And this is another little story, which I hope you'll be inspired and maybe use it in a way in front of your city council, because when I went today up the stairs, this most beautiful waterfall and statue, Maori statue, and then to the right, there's just a plot with nothing. So you can use it somehow to do something. What happened here, and listen to this idea, an artist came one day, just at the end of the day, when I had to go home and it was like back, 2008, and I had to take my kid out of kindergarten, and he said, look, Hila, I already got $8,000. I need $2 more thousand, and then I can put the duck on the roof. How is that as a statement? I said, which deck? On what roof? What do you want from me? And why should I give you $2,000? At the end of the day, I understood that the duck is a very interesting character, that all the community of illustrators are part of it in Tel Aviv. I did not know that. But what it did is it gave that little community, which is a moving and shaking community in town, the feeling that the city is there, that they can really put that, by the way, that is the mayor's office. That leg is just on Ron Huldai's office. So they really felt this is helping them. The $2,000 maybe they could raise by themselves, but the taking off the red tape and putting that duck actually up there was one of the best PR things I could do for the centennial year. And afterwards, it was actually adopted as the former icon of the centennial year. Now, we would sit for hours with advertising team and we would make that icon. We would not get to this, where all the city really felt it's theirs and they belong to that. So, and afterwards, by the way, when the winter came, we had to take it off because he had to fly over to Africa, the duck. But there's a little garden just next to the municipality. We made a statue of the duck, so the kids will have it forever. We really felt, and we found budget somehow for that. 10 times more than that, 2,000. So once you do feel that you're engaged with your citizens, it's the question of how to remove barriers, how to put Ben Gurion and his head just on the beach, and this is not Miami, this is Tel Aviv. The end of the story of the global positioning of Tel Aviv is understanding that innovation took another step as a smart city. You probably heard the term, most likely from all over the world. Every city wants to refer to itself as a smart city. There is no specific answer about how are you getting a city smart. Of course, you expect government to government. That means traffic, cameras, public safety, all these things that are expected to be part of a smart city. But we think we need to take it to the next step. That means government to citizen. So we issued our own digital card. We put a library of books just out there because for us, we are all the time on the beach. And it's not, when we're talking smart, it's not always just digital. It's not just devices. Smart is really what the citizens need, and you need to listen to them. And that is not an easy thing. You really have to do it with an open heart and understand that not always what you think is right is the right thing. Now, I'm saying it now, it sounds so, yeah, of course, but it's not. It's hard to put your ego aside and listen to your residents and go one step with them, but that is a smart city. A city that does things like that, and in 2014 we understood that we have so many things around that Tel Aviv is doing right. We actually wrapped them all up and we approached the bid of Smart City Award in Barcelona 2014, and guess what? We didn't even believe it. We won first prize. So that really helped us position ourselves. Are we the smartest city in the world? Don't tell anyone, but of course not. But it helped us position. So through these things, through the smart city as citizen to citizen, that sharing economy that is so strong, and I love the term you used yesterday, Mayor, about libraries as the most formal as sharing, the first sharing economy, or one of the first sharing economy. But there's so many other ways of having sharing economy with the government to business, with the private sector. We did not talk enough about the private sector, and I think what is going to happen in the library and the collaborations with your private sector is a must. The private sector, with no offense, I think, always knows a little bit better than us officers that work for the city. They're one step before us. They have to get their bottom line. For us, if we don't, nobody fires us. But for them, if they don't have a bottom line, the bank fires them. So it's a must for the city to collaborate, for the government to collaborate with the business sector. There's some interesting things to look out for. The public coin as digital money is just one of those next tools that we can use. But actually, the sharing economy is something that is now worldwide used as Airbnb. I'm sure all of you guys are aware of. Maybe WeWork. Do you have WeWork around New Zealand? Not yet, but you probably have co-working space. Google it up. But I'm sure you are aware of the concept of co-working spaces for offices and Airbnb for hotels. And then there was this bright woman in Tel Aviv that initiated Eat With. That means also you don't have to eat only in restaurants, but you can eat at people's houses. So there's 200 cities now around the world that are hosting people to eat in as a restaurant in a private home. This is the local, the going local, the tourism that interests us so much. So these sharing economy is part of the smart cities that we have to, I think, to take the next step and to understand that. And just to wrap up, after 8 years in office in Tel Aviv as the head of Centennial Year and the head of global team, my mayor offered me to be the CEO of Tel Aviv Foundation. Now, this foundation is 40 years old, very traditional, 15 people and staff. All of them know much better than me on how to raise money and how to do things. But what we do understand together now, that traditional philanthropy is very important, but it moves a little bit aside. That means there's still philanthropy, but if we won't stretch that budget and look for smart financial tools such as social finance bonds, such as public-private partnerships, such as Citicoin, crowdfunding that I heard you use so nice with the bull you brought from Venice. This is something that Tel Aviv can learn from you by getting the belonging through crowdfunding. So all these new tools actually helping to elaborate the city's quality of life. So before environment, education, arts and culture, social service, these were things that were taken for granted. I think that innovation is the next step that we need to put also on our radar, because we don't know how, Andrew just said that by 2050, 75% of the world is going to live in cities. How are they going to eat there? How are they going to communicate there? How are they going to live there? How are they going to sleep there? We don't know that yet. This thing that is, we didn't know how to imagine it just 7 years ago. Today it's my camera, it's my navigator, it's my purse, it's my everything. So we don't know how we're going to do everything, and we have to put a lot of numbers into that innovation ecosystem. This is the 40 years of action that we did with so many projects and touched so many lives, but we couldn't have done that without our global partners all over the world. And I do think that before I say thank you so much for the end of this journey, I do think Christchurch has this special spirit of exploring and going to its new step. So I wish to thank you so much for bringing me here and continuing this beautiful journey that we just started. Thank you.